First, I was lucky enough to catch best-selling Indian author and activist Arundhati Roy a couple of days ago. I asked her first whether she was influenced by her mother's activism.
My mother influenced me in incredible ways, you know. Well, we are like now I actually ran away from home when I was 17.
What was that about, Arundhati?
It was serious, but I keep saying that we're like two nuclear-powered states, can't be too close to each other.
Oh, is that so? Okay. Yeah. Two powerful women, I see. Okay, so I want to talk about this book, The God of Small Things. It has been taught in university lectures, debated. It won the Men Booker Prize. Were you taken by surprise by its appeal, and what do you think was so appealing about the book?
Before I wrote The God of Small Things, I studied architecture, and then I worked in cinema for a while. And when the films were sort of lunatic fringe cinema, nothing, mainstream, nothing successful. And when I decided to write a novel, I thought it would be even less so, To tell you the truth, I have no idea why something, especially a work of literature or a work of art, I don't think any of us know why something touches many people. We don't know, and that's why it's art.
Let's talk about your non-fiction work. I'll start with this essay on capitalism. And you talk about the new rulers of India, the Ambanis and the Tatas. And you describe what's happening in India by describing the sunset over Ambani's superlative home. 27 stories with a helipad or several of them. What exactly is your problem with the Ambanis and their opulence?
Well, it's not my problem. I think it's India's problem, that, the house and the opulence of the house is just a minor part of it. That's just the manifestation. Like the Ambanis worth 44 billion, their market capitalization. They have controlling shares in 27 television channels. Plus, they give these huge funds to foreign universities. Plus, they have these foundations through which they kind of fund activists or documentary. So they've covered the government, the opposition, the media, the courts, the elections. They can buy news, they can buy everything, with that kind of money. In a country where 80% live on less than 20 rupees, which is, $0.50 a day. You have more poor people in India than the poorest countries of Africa put together. You don't hear this, right? Because India is a superpower.
I want to talk about the ghosts that you write about in this essay. You talk about the 250,000 farmers, debt-ridden, who've killed themselves. You say, but which of us sinners was going to cast the first stone? Not me, who lives off royalties from corporate publishing houses. We all watch Tata Sky. We surf the net with Tata. We ride in Tata taxis. We stay in Tata hotels. So Arundhati, tell me, do you feel guilty yourself about being part of the middle class and your Tata lifestyle?
Well, I certainly feel uncomfortable, but I don't feel guilty because, they have created a system where if you're not in the system, then you're being hunted in the forest, or you're displaced and you're going like some poor person from tribunal to tribunal. And they want to create a politics of guilt. Gandhi created a politics of guilt, Whereas here, what we have to fight is a political fight. Otherwise, you can take the boutique option, I'll go and live in some forest and eat organic food and, use brown paper bags or whatever. But that just helps you. We need a new imagination. Perhaps it begins with forcing capitalism to tolerate a non-capitalist society in its midst so that it accepts the fact that it can't have everything.
You also talk about, or you criticize, the infrastructure development, the infrastructure plans where you come from, and you specifically mention the Delhi-Mumbai industrial corridor. It comprises freight lines, expressways, airports, power plants. The government probably calls it progress. The capitalists probably call it progress. Are you anti-progress?
We have seen so many decades of this progress, and that is what has led us to this huge disparity. We've seen the dams being built in the names of the poor, and then the water going to the car manufacturers and the sugarcane farmers, So now that argument doesn't work in India anymore. It doesn't wash, and everyone has got the picture. People have been told, oh, this is to generate jobs. But no, there are no jobs. The people are just residue, that need to be disposed of. You have hundreds of thousands of paramilitary forces closing in on villages in the forests, which are basically sitting on natural resources and trying to empty those villages. So thousands are being killed, thousands are in jail,
There's a fascinating theme that you explore in your nonfiction work. You talk about perception management. And you talk about the corporate philanthropists. You are talking about how the likes of the Tatas, the Ambani brothers, they are financing and sponsoring artists, festivals, literature. Looks good, that's the veneer. But your interpretation of that is that they are buying out potential revolutionaries. They are buying out the voices that should hold corporate power accountable. And you liken it to what happened in the United States in the 1914s with J.D. Rockefeller. Tell me about him. Tell me about his foundation and how it bought or silenced the radical voices.
Now it sounds quite normal, right? For an industrial house to have a charity or a foundation or run NGOs. NGOs are like the New World's missionaries. But in those days, it was a brilliant move where you took the profits from your business and you funneled it into these charities, which were completely non-transparent, completely non-accountable, and could then move into making policy and so on. So the Rockefeller, the Ford, and the Carnegie foundations actually sort of worked very closely with the CIA. They bought the land for the UN. They started this thing called the Foreign Relations Council. And the men from these councils then, almost every World Bank president has been a member of the Foreign Relations Council. So you create these kind of overlapping cells, and they run the world, and they are themselves very non-transparent, but they are busy. Millions of dollars are being spent in Africa and in India, asking for transparency, asking for rule of law as long as they make the laws,
You do talk about how Rockefeller in particular basically silenced the voice of Martin Luther King, of the Black consciousness movement, Steve Biko's Black consciousness movement. How did you do this?
By funding the moderates, and gradually edging out radical movements. But in the case of Martin Luther King, beginning the Martin Luther King Foundation, and then slowly kind of changing his program from everything that Martin Luther King ever stood for. So you actually, it's not just the man, but the memory itself that is so dangerous that you have to change it.
Oh, you have something to say about Nelson Mandela, who is seen as this icon. The likes of Mandela, after taking the money from these foundations, they now become part of the system. So, Arundhati, what do we do? Do we not have icons to look up to anymore?
Well, these are certainly not necessarily the icons. For me, somebody like Nelson Mandela or even somebody like Gandhi, I object to, deifying them, because I think they committed plenty mistakes, That doesn't mean you have to trash them or jump on their memories or what they did, but we have to see.
Thank you very much, Arundhati. I've loved chatting to you, and I look forward to the next book and the essays. Please keep them coming.
Okay.